Okay, let's get started here today. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're doing well. It's Monday. We're going to do a couple of interesting Rashis from Parshas Mishpatim. I'm going to borrow a couple of Rashis from yesterday, from Sunday, from the first Aliyah, and then go to one Rashi from today, from the second Aliyah as well. A complicated but interesting Parsha, Mishpatim, very different in nature than some of the Parshios that have come before. Actually, all the parshios that are to come from now until the end of Sefer Shmos, certainly into Vayikra, are very different than what we've seen. We've seen action-packed, miraculous parshios of Yitzias Mitzrayim and Geula and redemption and fascinating Rashis, going back even before that to Bereshis, to the stories of the Avos and Imahos, and fascinating life lessons that we've seen from Rashi. We're getting much, much more technical. So, I know it's not a spoiler alert because you've all read the Parshios already many, many times throughout your life, but the Rashis are going to get more technical, maybe a little bit more boring. We'll have to be a little bit creative in terms of what we derive from them and which ones we look at going forward. And certainly that hits in this week's Parsha. We have many halachos in this week's Parsha, many mitzvahs in this week's Parsha, mitzvahs of Ben Adam Lechavero, mitzvah of how to keep a civil society running, how to organize halachos of damages and halachos of court systems and halachos of theft and everything else that comes from there. So the parsha opens with these words, Ve'ela hamishpatim asher tasim lifnehem, and these are the laws that you should place before them. Rashi comments, and really Chazal comment on Ve'ela, the Vav in Ve'ela, and on the words tasim lifnehem. So Vav always indicates a chibur of some sort. Vav indicates a connection to what came before. So ve'ela hamishpatim, Rashi says, kol makom shenemar ela, pasalas harishonim. Ve'ela mosif al rishonim. Whenever a parsha begins ela, these are, it's indicative of a clean break from what came before. Okay, you learned something before, and now, big stop, big pause. Ela, now you learn something new. These are the things I'm going to teach you now. But ve'ela, the vav hachibur, the vav that connects, is indicative of the fact that we're not poselas harishonos, we're not negating what came before, but rather mosif al harishonim, we're adding to what came before. So what are we adding here? Obviously, we're adding new mitzvahs, but that's not what Rashi's saying. Adding means there's some connection that the between these two parshios, between these two topics, there's something complementary about them. And what is it that it's adding? What is it, the complementary element that we're learning after we learn all the halachos from Matan Torah and the Aseres Hadibros? Now we're getting to the civil laws of Ben Adam L'Chavero. What do we learn about the connection? Maharishonim misinai, af elu misinai. Just like the first laws that we learned last week in Matan Torah were, of course, given from Sinai. They were given by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They were given at Matan Torah. So too these laws are given. Lest you think that the civil laws recorded in the Torah are just basic human instincts, human laws. No, these are divine laws, just like the laws of Ben Adam Lamakum. Just like Shabbos is a law of Ben Adam Lamakum, which came from Sinai, so too theft is a law of Ben Adam Lechavero, which came from Sinai as well. It's all from Hashem. It's all Torah, even though it looks pretty much like mundane civil laws that are about to come in this parsha. The Lama Nismacha Parshas Dinim LeParshas Mizbeach. The immediate antecedent of this parsha is, of course, the description of the Mizbeach in the Beis Hamikdash to teach us an even greater lesson. Lomar Shetasim Sanhedrin Eitzel Hamikdash. To teach us that just like these two parshios are juxtaposed, so we have the parsha of the Mizbeach, the centerpiece of the Mishkan and the centerpiece of later the Beis Hamikdash, and now we have the laws of jurisprudence, we have torts, we have civil law, we have interpersonal law, all of that which is governed and adjudicated by courts of Jewish law, by the Sanhedrin. So too we learn that in physical space they have to be juxtaposed as well. That you're supposed to put the Sanhedrin sitting right next to the Mizbech, inside the Mikdash. And there was a special chamber for the Sanhedrin to sit right inside the Mikdash as well, because the two concepts are complementary. They're indicative of the juxtaposition of them in the parsha is indicative of the fact that it's all from Sinai. So too, the way we physically place them in the world, the Sanhedrin should see the Mizbeach should see the Sanhedrin. We should recognize that there's an absolute correlation and partnership between Ben Adam L'Chavero and Ben Adam L'Makom, and it's all part of Torah, which we are supposed to learn and we are supposed to practice. Now, the end of the pasuk is also interesting. It says, "These are the laws, Eila Hamishpat ve'Eila Mishpatim, and these are the laws, Asher Tasim Lifnehem, that you should place before them. It's kind of a strange language. Usually Moshe is instructed to teach the people, to guide the people, to command the people, to instruct the people. What does it mean to place the laws before them? So Rashi says here, Asher tasim lifnehem, Amar la HaKadosh Baruch Hu Moshe. Hashem says to Moshe, Lo ta'ale al dascha lemor, don't think to yourself, saying, Eshna lehem aperek shnayim shlosha pamim, ad shetestura b'fiem kemishnasa, ve'eni matriach atzmi lahavinam taimei hadavar pirusho. Maybe Moshe is saying to himself, okay, God, you gave me all these laws at Har Sinai. I'm going to teach them to the people a couple of times, 2-3 times. They'll memorize it. They'll know it by heart. They'll be able to repeat it, and I'm done. My job is over. I don't have to teach them the rationales. I don't have to teach them the reasons, and I don't have to teach them the connections and the between the lines and the backstory. I don't have to teach them any of that. I teach it to them. They memorize it. They have the information, and they move on. Lest you think that, says Hashem to Moshe. Don't do that. I'm telling you now, you have to place it before them. What does it mean to place it before them? It means you don't just wash your hands of it. It means that you place before them. You place it before them in a way that it's absolutely beautifully laid out and prepared, ready for them to partake. Moshe, your job is not done by teaching it once, twice, 3 times and having them memorize it. Your job is never done. The job of a teacher is never done. You are the Rabban Shel Yisrael, the greatest teacher the Jewish people has ever known. Your job is to place it literally before them like a set table that they can partake of. You go to a buffet, you don't have to go in the kitchen and find the pans and find the sauce and find the recipe and start mixing and stirring. You made a mistake and you got to go back. No, you go to the buffet, everything's at your disposal. All the food is right there for the taking. That's how the Torah is supposed to be for the Jewish people. That's your job, Moshe, to make it palatable, to make it explainable, to make it understandable, to make it digestible, to use a lot of food analogies for the people. That's Asher Tasim Lifnehem. You should place these things before them. These things are complicated, and they shouldn't just think it's a set of information for them to learn, but something for them to really grasp and really understand, which is, of course, why our main code of Jewish law is named the Shulchan Aruch. Based on this Ma'amar Chazal, based on this idea, Shulchan Aruch was a way of taking all the halachos of the Gemara and the discussions and everything else and placing it before us, the Jewish people, in an ordered, coherent fashion that is easily accessible for each of us for the taking. A beautiful start to the Parsha, beautiful way to preface this Parsha of jurisprudence. I'll go to the end of our Aliyah today. I just want to get in one small Rashi from our Aliyah, which is the second Aliyah, since today is Monday. In this Aliyah, talk a little bit about Geneva, about theft. So sometimes when someone steals something, if the item is still intact, they have to give back the item and pay kefel. They have to pay double. That's the damages they have to pay. But if they sold or disposed of or killed the animal or did something and they can't give back the item, so they have to pay arba or chamisha. They have to pay 4 or 5 times as a penalty, 4 or 5 times the value of the object which they stole. The pasuk says, Ki yignov ish shor oseh, when a person steals an ox or a sheep, u'tivacho macharo, and kills it, slaughters it, or sells it, and therefore they don't have it to pay back to the owner, chamisha bakar yishalem tachas ashor, va'arba tzon tachas aseh. He has to pay 5 oxes for the ox and 4 sheep for the sheep. So 4 times the price of the sheep, 5 times the price of the ox. Rashi addresses himself to the fact that there's a discrepancy between the penalty for stealing the ox and getting rid of it versus stealing the sheep and getting rid of it. Rashi says an interesting idea, which you're going to have to think about more, since we are running out of time. But Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Chas hamakom al kavodan shel brios. Very interesting how the Torah here teaches us that we have to have concern for kavod habrios, for the dignity of a human being, even of a thief. We have to have dignity, has to have dignity. Shor sheholach baraglav lo nisbaze bo haganav lenosal ktefav mishalom chamisha. Sesh nesal ktefo mishalom arba'a. If someone steals an ox and then gets rid of it, the ox, when they stole it, had to have walked on its own. It walks on its own. However, a sheep, when you steal a sheep, before you get rid of it, you have to carry the sheep on your back. And it's degrading to a human being to carry an animal on their back. It's not dignified for them. And therefore, the thief already got a certain measure of punishment through the indignity of having to carry the sheep on his shoulders or her shoulders. Therefore, when they're obligated to pay a penalty for the theft, they only have to pay 4 times. Whereas with an ox, they didn't suffer that indignity. Their penalty is higher. Just an interesting thought for you to think about. That we have a very high threshold in terms of the dignity that is owed to human beings, even sometimes to a thief, and certainly kal vachomer to people who are more deserving of that dignity. I hope you have a wonderful day, everybody, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Be well.
Thank you,
Take care,
Rabbi.
Rabbi.
Everyone.
Thank you.